Hello, welcome to our presentation for the government of Rwanda about implementing a cyber governance strategy. And we're using the case studies from Vietnam and the Czech Republic, also known as Czechia, for this case study, as well as the lessons learned. Agenda, start off with the Rwanda overview, roadmap to success, then go into our key countries. Comparison to Vietnam, how Rwanda can compare and get on the roadmap towards Vietnam, and then comparisons to the Czech Republic, which we see as the North Star down the road, and then key lessons learned. And it's important that when we talk about frameworks, we're really going to use the Czech Republic examples of standardization and what Rwanda can use going forward. So Rwanda, I know everyone probably knows the history, but just to kind of get a baseline, obviously a former Belgian colony, the genocide in the 1990s that you suffered obviously had a slow impact on government institutions. By 2000, there was a more firmer government of Rwanda, more firmer establishment of institutions. Rwanda was seen as a model of recovery after a ethnic conflict. And then in 2010, you started your Vision 2020, which was designed to remove Rwanda from its violent past. And the problem we have here is that Rwanda is almost a victim of its own success. There was exponential growth in information technology, exponential growth in their economy, or a big growth in their economy, but because of that growth was prioritized over cybersecurity and cyber threats, which is why we're here right now to discuss the path forward. And we just want to give you the bottom line forward. So this is 2022 now. We're looking at these frameworks or these potential roadmaps for where we want to see Rwanda, or where we can take you by about 2028, 2029. So we implement the strategy this year that we're going to talk about. In 2023, we'll see the criminalization of bad behavior, which other countries have done, or using the internet to engage in bad behavior, and I'll talk about that in a second. By 2024, establishment of a cyber framework, and this is where we're going to use the Czechia or Czech Republic example, which involves private and public sector partnerships. By 2025, we have already invested in the workforce, but we'll start seeing the fruits of a cyber workforce. And by 2026, we'll see a cyber incident response force at the central government to respond to cyber threats, cyber intrusions. And by 2027, we not only want to just see it in Rwanda, but we want Rwanda to be an example, to be sort of like an African Union cyber core, with Rwanda leading the edge as the entire country faces cyber threats. And as we know, cyber threats don't just happen in one country, they spill over borders and other boundaries. So we want Rwanda to lead the African Union in that perspective. So what does Rwanda face? So two major threats: cyber criminal threats. This is always a big one, and you can see the headline from the New Times about cyber crime, everything from small-scale ransomwares to intrusions to credential stealing to using the cyber domain for other criminal activity like human smuggling. So that's probably the biggest thing that Rwanda faces as far as threats. But the second thing is disinformation. Right now, other countries have experienced disinformation, and it has led to genocidal behavior, whether it's in Burma or in Myanmar, in India against the Muslim population there. Facebook and WhatsApp and other social medias have contributed to this. And knowing that Rwanda's history in this area, we definitely think this should be part of any cyber governance framework. So why do we choose Vietnam going forward? Well, like Vietnam, like Rwanda, former colony of the French, and they went through decades of ethnic conflict and violence, and they have central government control, which is an important aspect, similar to Rwanda. Side note to the instructor, not to the consulting, when I say central government control, I mean autocracy, that they have the ability to do a top-down framework, unlike the democracies that we'll talk about in a second. So getting back to the presentation, Vietnam went from a communist to a semi-capitalist state. And like Rwanda, they were a victim of their own success. They faced rapid digital growth, rapidly growing economy, but that led to, again, a soft cyber underbelly that they still see now. And the threat, again, in some cases they're luckier. They have the same threat from cyber criminals that Rwanda has and almost every country has, and that's been an issue. But they also have a big nation state threat from China, which obviously has a significant cyber threat to Vietnam. And that has kind of focused their cyber behavior, their cyber activity, and focused their country to increase their performances. So we think there's, again, lessons from Vietnam that are clear. And I just want to cover the top lessons. Vietnam sees cyber as a national security issue, just like any other, military or ground invasion. They've put cyber as part of their national security strategy, and we expect Rwanda to do the same. They've instituted a public-private partnership. Vietnam is communist in theory, but they've instituted information sharing between the public and private sector. There's no boundaries that you might have in democracies, because they can tell their private sector companies, you will report cyber intrusions. We will work together. So that's an important institutional framework that needs to be established in Rwanda. Third, they've established a legal framework criminalizing certain activity in cyberspace. Vietnam was a victim of human smuggling for many, many years. They were able to use the cyber statutes that they developed to counter human smuggling. They've made theft illegal, and just recently they've made actual cyber espionage and intrusions illegal. So they have established and codified in their strategy what is legal, what is illegal in cyberspace. And that type of clarity is where Rwanda should go next. They have, again, already have a centrally SOC, a Security Operations Center, that deals not just with government intrusions and looking at China and foreign threats, but dealing with ransomware and criminal elements that they share with the public sector. That is established at the national level and pushed down across the board. And again, as a autocratic country, or as a centrally controlled country, they can do that with a higher degree of specialization. But where Vietnam falls short, and that's where we'll get into Czechia and the cybersecurity frameworks, is they don't have an established one that could cover. It's a little bit more ad hoc, but they don't have an established one that covers standardization. And because of that, we'll go into Czechia from here.
The Czech Republic has many qualities and processes that Rwanda can learn from. Now, compared to Rwanda, the Czech Republic is a democratic government, and as a result, because they are a democratic government, in 2010, they actually began a national CSRIT, also known as the National Computer Security Incident Response Team, which was established to perform a point of contact. Now, a point of contact is in the event that there is a data breach and something bad happens, or there's a major incident that compromises the security of confidential data, organizations and the government have the necessary processes and protocols put into place where you have a specific task and the necessary procedures and standards are put into place to ensure that the risk can be mitigated. Additionally, they also have the NCISA, which also encourages that security is always ongoing and it is always in development. And as a result, cybersecurity is actually an important part of their education when it comes to learning about the different technologies and different types of trends that are occurring. And just like how in technology and security, it's always changing and evolving, when it comes to securing different systems or having different processes, security is always a battle between the hackers and the people that secure those systems. And in order for Rwanda to adapt a few of the ideals that the Czech Republic has, Rwanda needs to have the necessary processes and protocols, whether it is from a policy perspective, like having the National Computer Security Incident Response Team, or a technology development strategy, like making technology part of the business. There's many ways Rwanda can learn from the Czech Republic in order for it to improve its security and its infrastructure. And Rwanda is actually growing a ton within the IoT headspace, so things like sensors or lights or electronic vehicles, all that data is able to gather specific insights so businesses can allow individuals to react and respond quickly. And while there's a tremendous amount of innovation that comes with IoT, the thing is, there's a lot of security that has to be accounted for. And currently, IoT is a growing trend, and just like any other technology, when it grows, so does the complexity. And as the complexity grows, what also needs to be accounted for is the different types of security that has to go around that IoT. And similarly to how the Czech Republic has the NCSIRT, one of the policies that Rwanda can do is adapt the ISO 27002 standard. And just like how Rwanda is a growing country, one of the benefits of having the ISO 27002 is you have information security policies. So whether they use a cloud provider or have an on-premise infrastructure, they will have different access levels that they can work with to ensure that different users can still perform the necessary functions on a daily basis. And organization of information security. So there's going to be different types of security protocols, whether it is authentication, where users need to be able to authenticate to connect to a server, or authorization, where they have to authorize to get a specific level of access. They need to have the level of security involved in order to communicate securely. Additionally, there's also human resources security. So one of the ways is when it comes to development, different types of processes and protocols and development operations processes, all those have to be put into place. And asset management, so different assets need to be managed, and anytime new technologies need to be added, things like PI compliance, HIPAA, encryption, all of that needs to be accounted for. And asset control. Are there any changes that need to be made, or what types of procedures need to go into place if a change were to be made? And cryptography. So when it comes to security, in a technical perspective, data has to be secured at rest, in transit, and in motion. And if data is to be secured at rest, it also needs to be encrypted. So things like social security numbers, people's phone numbers or addresses, all that needs to be secured, and cryptography can help with that. And additionally, on top of the different types of authentication and authorization protocols, There's also physical and environment security. Are the networks on a secured VNet or are they running on the intranet? And additionally, will there be multi-factor authentication involved? And also, will devices connecting to the organization's servers, will there be any physical hardware that can help with that security as well? For example, like a YubiKey. Sometimes YubiKeys may need to be required in order for devices to be functioned properly. So having all these processes put into place, this will allow Rwanda to be ISO 27002 compliant. And by having these compliant protocols and processes in place, they can follow that same common denominator that the Czech Republic has when it comes to establishing different policies and procedures. But for Rwanda, it would be having an ISO certification. And additionally, if Rwanda were to continue to build off of achieving an ISO 27002 certification, and if they were to go to the cloud, because usually IoT tends to have data on the cloud, cloud providers like Amazon, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud operate under a shared responsibility model. And within that shared responsibility model, this means that the cloud providers will offer all the technologies or programs to ensure that the ISO 27002 certification can be achieved. However, it is up to the individuals or the technologists to be able to implement those procedures. Things like the IAM policies, or more from a more technical perspective, like the Amazon Key Vault or the Azure Key Vault, or having network security groups, all those need to be accounted for in order to achieve that ISO certification. And overall, Rwanda has a lot to learn, and they can definitely get that from the Czech Republic. And while changing the government type is probably not the way to go, focusing on the common denominator of having repeatable patterns and standardization is. And as a result, by having different standards, security also has to be instilled within the business, because as the technology grows, so does the complexity. And having these standards can allow for countries to grow their infrastructure safely without compromising security. And Rwanda can definitely get that from learning from the Czech Republic.
And just for posterity's sake, here are our references that we used for this assignment.